We got the cure, we got the answer to what's happening in society. We got the power to solutions and provide the healing that you need. We got the cure, we got the answer with discussions that will set you free. This is the Arc Republic, and you're listening to The Remedy. The Remedy. The Remedy.
With all that has been going on in the United States, coronavirus, protests, race relationships, people have been talking about leaving America, or at the very least, taking a break. Our next guest on the Remedy podcast offers some solutions.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever this podcast shall find you. Thank you for tuning in to The Remedy. Today we have a very special opportunity to talk to a couple of people in our community who are looking to do some very different things in terms of how we live, how we prosper, how we move in the Black community, especially during these precarious times in this particular election cycle in the United States. We have Miss Tanisha Barnes with the Black Freedom Colony, and then we have Lawrence, and please don't let me mess up your name, Totimeh?
Yeah, that's Totimeh. Totally.
All right. Okay. So we have two very special guests with us today who are going to give us the remedy on how to kind of survive this, and if we need to get out. Where we going? What we doing? So let's go ahead and start with you, Tanisha, and let us know what you're doing, and then we'll kick it off to Lawrence.
All right. So I'm T. Barnes. I'm founder of the Black Freedom Colony. And the Black Freedom Colony really just came about because I knew I couldn't stay. I knew the U.S. was getting to a place to where it wasn't going to be a place I could stay for a period of time. And I've been on this journey for about 7 years of really figuring out where I wanted to be. And so I thought there'll be a few families that want to come with me during this time period. You know, I thought about it as a temporary relocation. And turns out almost 100 people wanted to come.
Wow.
And it's turned into something from like seven apartments to 2 full buildings of Black people from all over the United States coming together in community here in Tulum, Mexico for the Black Freedom Colony. We have programming, we have homeschooling, we have Spanish classes, and we have activities together. So we're 2 weeks in, and it's beautiful. Yeah.
Okay, Lawrence.
I'm sorry, I was just captured by her story. I'm like, that's amazing. Congratulations with that, Tanisha. Like that's truly amazing. That's what we're aspiring to do through Liberia Forward as well. As you stated, my name is Sergeant Lawrence K. Totimeh Jr., founder and CEO of Liberia Forward. Our mission is to improve the livelihoods and support the economic success of working class and impoverished Liberians at home and abroad. So very similar to you, I've been trying to figure it out, right? Over the past couple of years, like something does not feel right. I've had all these successes in life, but I'm 32 going on 33 trying to figure out like, yo, what's next? Because this ain't it. I was in the military, served in Iraq and Baghdad as a door gunner for an entire year, came back to the States, and we were taught this whole concept that everybody's gonna love you, they're gonna uphold you, we're gonna take care of the troops. And he came back and fell right back into the category of being just another Black person. And the way that I've been treated since I came back really made me look at this country a different type of way. Like I've been sold a dream. So I said, well, let me start my own business and I'll be okay. I'll fend for myself. And then COVID came and I was like, what's next? And so getting frustrated here in LA, I was like, yo, something's got to give. I called my parents and said, hey, do we have any land back in Liberia? My dad sends me a video of the beach. I'm like, what's that? He's like, that's all of our land. I'm like, that's untouched beach. He was like, yeah, that's us. I'm like, what makes you think I want to stay in America if we got all of that over there? And so my dad asked me a question. He said, well, how are you going to fend for yourself? How are you going to make money? And from there, Liberia Forward came about. I started calling friends from college and was like, hey, would you want to grow food? Hey, are you happy doing what you're doing right now? If you could do something that you're passionate about, what would it be? And if you could do it with Black people, and they're like, I got a skill. And just bringing all of those skills together and saying, hey, we have a country that was founded by freed and formerly enslaved African Americans that was a fusion of the rooted culture there and what they have learned here in America. And we can learn from the mistakes that were made then and come back and do a new form of repatriation, of bringing us together and moving the country forward by building a sense of self-reliance, a pride in self and culture, and saying, hey, we are a national power that is global and not just a people who have been forgotten. So.
Right. I like the historical significance of Liberia as well. We all know that originally that's where we was all supposed to go, right? Back in the 20s and 30s, but we didn't all get there. So, Tanisha, what made you choose Tulum, Mexico? We see a lot of movement in Tulum with Black folks nowadays. What's going on? What's happening in Tulum right now?
I mean, so the same historical relevance that you find in Liberia is the same historical relevance that you find in Mexico, right? Mexico has a very long trajectory of being, the first place, the first nation in the Western Hemisphere to abolish slavery. Africans were running to Mexico for freedom. I'm a Texan, so we have a long history of Black freedom colonies, and Texas and Mexico had a lot of alliances between Black Mexicans. And actually, I think the president that abolished slavery was actually African, half African, and other things. So I mean, there's a lot of yeah, I think that there is, this is a continuum of the same thing. We find ourselves in a very similar situation as enslaved Africans did, 400 years ago. And so Tulum just got popping, like people started posting.
That's there, right?
It just got popping. I think that the reality is that there wasn't very many places to go, where Americans could go. The world was closed to us, and Mexico was one of the places. And I think that the way the media works now, social media, is that you find something good, you can share it, and people started coming. I personally got interested in Tulum because my mission is always Africa. My goal is to always get people to the continent. But I realized Mexico is such an interesting middle step. And I think that the ancestors really blessed me with this, because although I have a contingent of like-minded people that are ready to do, the Spy Palace, which is a commune that I'm doing in Morocco, and I have the guest house in Ghana. So we're already doing work for people to be in Africa. Most African Americans can't imagine that space, right? They need that middle ground. It's a $250 flight from most places, or cheaper. It's 2 or 3 hours away. You can get there, you can get home if something happens. I think that you have this group of people who are not as adventurous and global minded, but know that they can't stay, that there's something pulling them to say, I need to create a different life for myself. And I think Mexico just kind of opened up this opportunity, and Tulum is beautiful. It's the jungle. The weather is good. Black folks look beautiful in Tulum. Your skin is glowing in Tulum. And they've also been so welcoming, really excited that we're here. And I think even that space of being in a space where you're welcomed is a revolution, just waking up every day and people being happy that you're around. And so that's how we ended up in Tulum. For me, it's the interim step. But in the age of COVID, you never quite know what's next. So we're here for a while.
Okay. So I guess let's go ahead and just knock out all of the things that's wrong. That's pushing this, and so we can get to the remedy. So what's going on? So we know that this 2020 has been a beast, so to speak. We know that a lot of things that we thought were going to happen probably won't happen, and a lot of things that we never thought would happen, we're in the midst of, right? So tell me some of the things that's been going on, and either one of you can start, that really, outside of your personal experience, really made you say, it's time.
I'll let you go first, Lauren.
I would, so many ways to address this. But I would say, okay, I'll try to put it like this. I've seen the glitch in the system. If you all have ever seen The Matrix, the first Matrix is like one of my favorite movies in the entire world, because I see that as like as reality today. Because of social media, the media, and the control that the powers that be have over our society, they're able to push certain agendas. And because a lot of us are not being conscious of what we're taking in, we're able to be led and guided in certain ways. And so we only see the world in just black and white. We don't really see the real challenges, only the challenges that are presented to us. So when you have individuals such as us who are able to see the world in color, who are able to say, oh, I'm willing to take that step to do something outside of the norm, it causes a glitch in the system, right? We had our Marcus Garvey, who tried to throw that glitch in the system, but was easily taken down and cut out. You had your leaders of the 60s who tried to do the same thing, but were cut off and taken down. But each time that happened, it was more and more people. And now what we're starting to see, as she said, we have the ability to share our experiences. And with those experiences come understanding of the world around us. As African Americans, we've been taught that America is all we have and nowhere else will accept us, right? And so starting to be able to see the world and say, well, there's Black people in Mexico? What are they doing over there? There's Black people in Cuba. There's Black people in Russia. There's Black people who speak Chinese. It gives you a visual representation of yourself that you have never seen, because the visual representation we've always seen is, hey, you a thug on TV. Oh, you're a rapper in the streets. You're an athlete on the thing. But when you're starting to see like, oh, there's intellects, Black intellects that are out there studying stuff, doing this, doing that, it gives you a new sense. And you're like, what else is out there? I can't spend 70 plus years of my life right here in this country. There's more. And so what is that more? And so I believe Black people being able to see that there's more is starting to really bring all of the problems that are rooted at the bottom to the top, such as wealth inequality, our lack of education, or miseducation, I should say, and just how we're treated overall in this country. So it's often overlooked as, oh, racism's over. You had a Black president already. But no, now we're actually seeing what's going on because, well, we have tools now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I think that, Black people are unfortunately a victim of the idea of American exceptionalism in the same way that white folks are, right? Like the American media machine is very powerful at putting out a particular message. And I think that bubble and that idea consistently breaks, right? And America, this is like, for me as a historian, I think I'm spoiled in the sense that, I see the ebb and flows of American history, and you see the waves of terror. You saw after emancipation what happens in Reconstruction, the lynchings that happen, the KKK comes out of that time period. You go through the ebb and flow, America kind of levels off for a minute, and then you have Jim Crow. And, we have actually never had a break. But when you get into these moments of very intense intense violence, intense white domestic terrorism. I think that people are not able to stay within the bubble of American exceptionalism. And I think that what Black people are understanding is that the intensity with which the violence is coming, I think is making them way more aware than they have been before. And so when you have this moment in time, it's the perfect time to start reprogramming and reconditioning and re-educating and giving people more and more information. And because you have, these social media personalities that are moving around the world, that are having these different experiences, I remember Black folks would tell me racism is everywhere. No, racism is a structural, it's an institutionalized system that's very specific to this context, right? Racism isn't everywhere. Anti-Blackness might be almost everywhere, but we have to be able to start getting more sophisticated in how we understand what's actually happening around us. And I think we are. And as that happens, when people present opportunities, I know like this group that I have, it's not like my typical travel groups who are travelers. They're global. They're always moving around the world like me. These are people that are like, this may be my first passport. This may be the first time that I'm out of the country for more than 3 days on a weekend. And so I know when you start to reach that demographic of people, they've had enough. And I think that we've just reached one of these ebb and flows in our cycle, in our continuum, where it's so much that people have to look for other alternatives. They just don't feel comfortable enough, which America is great at lulling us back into comfort. So, we just try to take advantage of it, have it. Right now people are uncomfortable. And so I have the opportunity to show them that there's another way. Because the only way you can say that there's no other, that America's the best place is if you haven't been anywhere. Because if you've been someplace, then you'll know, oh no, there's some more, there's some more to this than that.
There's a lot more to it.
There's a whole world.
There's a whole world out there. And I think that the fear that many, and I think it is fear that many Black folks have about leaving is like the devil, it's right. I already know what it's like here. I can navigate these, systems and so on and so forth. But can you imagine a world where you didn't have to? My husband and I moved to Belize in 2015, and I always tell people that's where I learned about what it is to be Black. That's where I learned that Blackness is something that was made up in the way that we perform Blackness, right? I was in a classroom and I asked my students in Belize, we went to our section on race, and I said, well, how do you identify? And they looked at me like, I'm Belizean. What do you mean? And I'm like, I didn't understand. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm looking at you and I can see, and I literally had at least 4 to 5 students come to me after class and say, well, what race am I?
Wow.
Right. And I'm like, you know what I'm saying? What do you say? What do you tell somebody? Because, and it was so important that I understood or that I was able to go to a place where race wasn't the predominant issue. It was the money. It was the politics. It was how to come up. Those were the things that were the issue. Yeah, you had your bigotry, you had your prejudice, you're always going to have that within your tribes or outside of your tribes. But in the United States, we do Blackness completely different. And in the way that we do Blackness, and you guys tell me what you think, what is it about the way that we perform Blackness that is different than Tulum, than Liberia, that's getting us killed here?
What you said. I'm sorry, y'all pouring into me this like
that's what we do here, sir. That's what we do.
As you said, it's the performative part we're performing Blackness. Like, it's not genuine. As a high school educator, I literally see this in the classroom every day. My kids are trying to replicate what they see on TV or their favorite artist or whatever it is. It's like they're constantly trying to find themselves, right? And if you're trying to find yourselves, like I said before, what visual representation do you have of yourself? And the ones that our children have today are, well, not always going to be the best. Not the ones that are showing up on their news feed, I should say. And so that causes a challenge, because now they're acting a certain type of way. And when the white culture sees them, they're like, oh, this is how they act on TV, and this is how they react on TV. So this is how I should react in real life towards what I'm seeing right here in front of us. And so not having that representation that's showing like, hey, you can be like this person. Or I just seen a TikTok video come across my timeline of a teenage girl talking to her dad, and she was like, can I finish speaking, please? Can I finish speaking? Something of that nature. And it was like, this little girl saw a visual representation of herself and Kamala Harris on stage, regardless of how any of us feel about her, and was able to say, oh, I'm about to replicate her, because she just put that man in his face, and I can relate to that feeling of somebody talking over me, da, 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 da. We don't have too many of that, right? Because we're challenged with it. So like, what do you do when you don't have that? When you don't have that visual representation?
For me, I think that so I think we have to look at it a few ways, right? I think this is layered. I think when you look at, and I've had that same moment when I realized that Blackness isn't the default of people that don't live in the US, right? It's something very conditional. This social construction of race is something very specific to the US and how it plays out in people's lives. However, I'd like to challenge the idea of nationalism too. Right. I think that there is a beauty in this new identification. It's new, this idea of Blackness, right? It's an adaptation of of something white supremacy has tried to place on us, but also a power, right? I think that, when I'm spending time in Africa, when I'm spending time in the Caribbean, and I look at the tribalism, we can call it ethnic, whatever. There's tons of words to call it. Don't yell at me tomorrow. But when I look at the divisions that we have, and when you think about it, Africa has the most diverse DNA in out of everyone, right? We are literally not the same people, right? So the idea of Blackness is a new concept. And I think that it's liberating for all of us, right? The way that I understand that Black people, I'm from Texas, so I've never felt like I was searching for an identity, but I do think we are nationless. But I think that there's a beauty in that nationless. Like, I think nation states are corny. I think they're a product of European expansion. I think that they make no sense for how Black people vibe, how we commune with each other. We are definitely tribal. And I think that there's power in that space, right? So if you get rid of these nation states, then what are they? So, while that one person might be Belize, right? And they're like, well, I'm Belizean. What does that really mean? For me, Blackness is an opportunity. It's a political identity that we all can adopt across the continent. You see all of these things bubbling in Africa, the 17, nation passport, to where you can now travel within 17, different nations within Africa. I mean, my big desire is for Blackness to kind of spread the idea of Blackness, this idea of a unifying space that pulls us all together, and that we then transcend that into something different, where you have the United States of Africa, or you have, all of the things that we can do to really become one, because there's a power in the identity of Black lived experience that I see a trend every single place I go. So while other people may not identify Black for a variety of different reasons, based on how Black Americans have had such a different trajectory in the world, I see it as a space of opportunity. And, maybe at some point my language will change and will, bypass even the idea of Blackness. But I think for right now, there's something special in that space. And I don't think we need to I think we need to create the new. There is no grand past, not even on the continent. We were a
Right.
mess then too. And these are things that we got to be honest about this stuff.
Of
Like
course.
we're past mythology, right? We're past the utopia of Africa. Any of us spending lots of time in Africa already know it's not a utopia, but is an amazing space of spiritual rootedness, of culture, and an opportunity for us, all of us, Africans included, Caribbeans included, Black folks in America included, Black folks in the UK included, to create something new. And that's the way that I think about. So less of a handicap and more of just something really special. Everybody wants a piece of Black America. Everybody. We have a cultural capital in this world that's unbelievable. Everybody wants to know us. Everybody wants to sit at the table with us. You can do so much more outside based on this Blackness in the world than you could ever do in America. Thank America. Thank it for this new identity, this new opportunity, this passport. We're the only Black people in the world.
Right.
I mean, we're the only Black people in the world with this kind of mobility. The passport is the best thing America ever gave you. Use it to your advantage and build on this new space that has been built out of this trauma. I mean, we're some bad people. We do some amazing things in the world, So for me, it's more exciting than it is a handicap.
Mm-hmm. Let me present the issue, I guess you could say, that many Black people in America in particular would pose with either expatriation or just going to live, or even if it's so much as giving up your citizenship. Is this an issue of Black privilege where you can get a passport and go somewhere else, anywhere else? We find that many people say, well, I can't afford to go. How am I going to get the money? I can't get a passport now. I don't have a job. How am I going to get it? All of these things. And I think that is the thing that is stifling, is this issue of finance, especially if you're poor and Black. And I would argue that those are probably the people who most need a change. Maybe they don't need to go to Africa or Tulum, but they need to see something right outside, or see what their options are. So how do we get past the money? What's the remedy?
Organization.
Okay.
Hands down, organization for anything that we're doing. I would say even with Liberia, we have a bunch of small organizations that are trying to do things, but they're trying to do it alone. And because they're trying to do it alone, oftentimes you don't see the resources that you have around you because you're working alone. But when you work together, you're able to put those minds together and say, well, I have this challenge. And then Tanisha's able to say, well, we have this over here. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now that vision starts to look a lot more clear. And that's what I found with Liberia Forward. Was I had an idea. I called one friend because I don't know how to grow food, but he does. And he was like, oh, shoot, started looking up something. He said, well, they have a challenge education. Well, I know somebody who runs schools and she's the teacher of teachers. Let me call her and see what she thinks. She sees a problem. She's like, oh man, that's an opportunity. I also saw this. And so it's really just bringing people together to say, how can we overcome this? Because we've been taught a sense of dependency here in America that we're like, oh, I can't do this without this, right? But we haven't been, we need to re-ingrain that thought of, I can do this if I look to my left or my right and I see my Black brother and sister. One of them have the answer, or we can figure this out together. And when we have that mindset, then we can start to say, we can overcome and travel and see what is out there and abroad for us.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, for me, look, enslaved Africans got out of this place. right? Like let's be honest about what it is. We have had people that were enslaved leave the U.S. for as far as back to Africa. So this idea that money is what's stopping you, I don't think is true. I think that we have a issue of imagination, and and that's the imagining is the issue, and that is because of exposure. It's because of the propaganda of America. People are like, well, they're coming here, why go there? Of course we're the best place to be, even though you live on the periphery of the best place to be, right? Like, I think that I want people to start imagining, to imagine what could be different, right? Once you're able to even begin the imagination process, then this idea of, is this idea elitist? And I get that often, right? And I always laugh, the same money that you raise for Black Lives Matter to lay your body to beg white folks for an opportunity to live is the same money, right, that you can raise to get and reposition people on property that's going to be a quarter of what it costs for them to live in America. I have two girlfriends of ours, a group called Young Black and Global, and we already have these opportunities in Ghana and Morocco where we have places to stay, and this helps to raise money so that the people that can't access it, that can't afford it, can also come. They can work on the farm. We can create job opportunities for them. And, I totally agree with you about it's organization, but I think it's more than that. It is an imagination. You have to be able to imagine that there's another way. You have to be able to see it. All of these things, like, for whatever people think social media isn't, it is a beautiful, beautiful tool to be able to, I can show you better than I can tell you.
Yep.
I don't spend any time talking about America and their mess. I don't spend any time. It's a waste of my time at this point in the game. I think you need a critical analysis. You need to be able to help other people get to that. So if I need to teach a history class, I'll do that, right? I'll get you to understanding. But a lot of time being spent on options there, I think is a futile effort. So I spend my time getting people to imagine and to visually see that there's other ways to live that can be better, but then also providing practical solutions. You need jobs. You need places to stay. Okay, here's an apartment, like Black Freedom Colony. All you gotta do is come. If you have the resources, you come. And I tell people, share. This is a community. You might have like one, 2-bedroom is 1,500. That might be expensive for a lot of people, especially if they still have stuff in the US that they have to maintain. Get a roommate. Split it up. You're a single mom, you stay in one room with your kid, let them stay in another room with their kid. Give yourself reprieve, but you have to be able to imagine this. I'm not a big sacrificer. People are like, I'm not going to like live off the land somewhere in
no
like,
ma'am.
No, I'm about the fancy life. I like the fancy life. I want to live better. Like the revolution is to live better than what I live in the US. Mentally, spiritually, physically, economically. I want to eat better. And I do. And it's really just creating those opportunities for people to realistically be able to tackle it. Imagine it first, though. If you can't even imagine your life better, then we can't even get to the place where we're talking about pack up your stuff and move to Africa. Like, we have to give our people an imagination again, and we've had it. We're the most imaginative people on earth.
Oh yes.
Who knows what? Yes. I had so I hear you, but it was one thing that I was like, but I wonder, and that's, what are we willing to give up? Like, I understand that we're so accustomed to the lifestyle we have here. So simple things as electricity, running water, the convenience of just getting food delivered to our door. But what are we willing to give up for that freedom? And I think that is part of the challenge that we have here, is that when we look at a country that is developing, whether it be on the third stage or second stage of development, as Black Americans, we look over there and it's like, I mean, they have it, but they don't have this. And oftentimes I use the analogy, and it's probably bad on my part, of like, when we are nearing the end of enslavement, were they looking and saying like, I mean, freedom look good over there, but look at what they got to go through to get that. It's like,
yeah, they were.
it's like, I'm good over here. I mean, they said that things kind of getting better. And like you said, America's good at pacifying us and saying, oh, well, here's something here. And we're like, I mean, yo, man, I get the big bag of Doritos now. They still struggling to even, get the other one. So what are we willing to sacrifice in order to get that freedom, in order to build what it is for the future? And I guess that's more of my mindset. But I have come to understand that there's many branches that lead to the solution of this entire tree. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. I think this idea of sacrifice, right, comes with this perception that Africa is struggling. I mean, the reality is that depending on what level of life you live in the US, you would go to Africa and live a better life out the gate, right? You would have access to way more things in terms of opportunities and jobs because you can push that envelope much quicker.
Yeah.
And while I understand the argument of struggle, one, I don't think it's a great PR tool.
Not at all.
Nobody's looking to struggle, right? Like that is not the goal. But I also think it's just not always true, right? The poorest of poor in the United States exceed financially the poorest of poor in Liberia, right? We know that this is different. And I do think when I talk about giving up something, to me, it's a mindset. It's not what are the things that you give up, right?
Okay.
How are you willing to reposition the way you think about life? What's important to you? Like I'm willing to get out and grow some vegetables because it's important to me to have good food. So I'm willing to put that physical exertion into something like that. So, and I think the way that we frame this, again, will help to stimulate the imagination, will help to ease some of the discomfort. Nobody wants to leave the US struggling here to go and struggle in a place that they are not familiar with. Yeah. So there has to be spaces where we can say the quality of life, and you're gonna get me on this one, but I think that it's also important where we start these ideas of expatriation. Where is the living standards equitable? Or if not equitable, damn near equitable. Where are the spaces? And I mean, then you get into development, right? Like, so where are the places that you can transition? Because to me, these are the sophisticated conversations that allow people to really be able to access it. So if I tell you in Senegal, you can have access to the same level of Wi-Fi, the same level of, standard electricity and, properties and amenities and countertops and all of that stuff. It makes that transition in your imagination a little more doable. And it's a reality, like you can move if you're paying, what are people paying in New York now? $2,500 at the minimum a month for rent.
Single.
as a like you're not gonna pay you could go and find an equitable space for a quarter of that money. Or so it's also starting to get deeper into we've had years of this grander conversation. I'm about these details. This is how much it costs to gas yesterday was 19 pesos. There is 21 pesos in a gallon. 19 pesos, less than $1 a gallon. Those are the details people need to know. So where do you go that you can transition the easiest? And then you can start to spread out because we do need to help Africa develop. Africa needs to help us develop, right? Like this is an exchange, but getting people to places where they can be comfortable, helping people along that can't access it. Because the Black Freedom Colony has been offered whole buildings, like if we could raise money. For one thing, you can raise money to put a family in an apartment and give them opportunities, especially if you have land to farm. There's a lot of ways to think about this. And I think sacrifice is the least of it, right. Honestly, because once you get to the continent, it's not so much a sacrifice.
Right. And I think one of the biggest issues that you're talking about is that Black folks love to struggle. Right. We love to talk about the struggle. We love to be in the struggle and into the fight or whatever. And I, I was talking to my husband about this. I said, I'm tired of the struggle. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to get out here and fight and no civil war and all of this kind of stuff. I'm trying to get my kids and my passport and break camp out of here. It's like, because when once you get into the fight, you get so ingrained into the fight, you forget what it is that you get at the end. And it's nothing, right? Because it's all about the struggle. And we, even Talib Kweli, and that's a whole different thing. But he had the beautiful struggle, right? And I think one of the things that we have to do as Black folks in America is say that this is not beautiful. It's not beautiful to watch my kids suffering and afraid of the police and and things like that. It's not beautiful to go into the store and you get cussed out by a white lady or whatever and get called all kinds of niggas and things like that. There's nothing about that is necessary for us to live, right? And so that's why I think that these kind of conversations are so important, because we as Black people have been taught that we are supposed to struggle. You see a lot of Black, because as soon as you try to do something outside of this struggle, then you're privileged, you're bougie, you think you're better than everybody else, and and things like that. And that's a conversation that's such a huge conversation, because it's been so ingrained in us. So
can we be honest about it though?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I mean,
love
it's a failed Christian ethic. One of our biggest problems is our. Look, you said bring it, I will bring it.
That's what we gonna do.
Let me sip my tea.
I don't have no tea, but I'll tell you.
I'm loving it.
The real hard reality is that Black American people have such an attachment to Christianity and Western Christianity and the false identification of struggle, right? As prideful, right? Black women are so strong. That is somehow your calling card to now you're acceptable and valuable, right? Like ride or die. Why are we dying? Like, there's all of these attachments to like the bad. I'm about the good life. It just doesn't make sense to me. And a part of it is my complete disattachment to Christian ethic. The idea that somehow struggle makes you now more valuable in the world. And I think that we have to be honest about our attachments to Christianity, our attachments to these outdated ideas that were used to imprison us and enslave us. And once you can free yourself from those ideas, and that's why the revolution is better living. The revolution is more luxury. It's more joy. It's more laughter, right? If you're struggling and fighting, and who are you fighting? What are we still asking? Like, what are you asking of America at this juncture? 400 years later, you got a lot of time to see what this has to offer. What are you asking for? Are you asking for your humanity? For it to be recognized? You can only recognize your humanity.
Asking.
But whom? What is the fight? Like I never understand it, because I'm like, yo, like I be in Ghana chilling. I ain't fighting nobody except maybe the man that's like working my nerves. Like, and when you aren't fighting, who are you? Because that's where, I mean, what I'm able to accomplish without the weight of American racism on my shoulders, the amount of creativity that I have, the amount of things that I do in a short period of time, because I pull that energy back. I mean, it's like undeniable. You can't beat that kind of energy. What are you struggling for in the U.S.? What is the fight? Why would you lay your body out in the street at this point? Who are you asking?
Right. The fight again is something that is a social construct. There is no fight. Like you said, if you have to tell somebody that your life matters. And I say this all the time. If you have to tell somebody that your life matters, it doesn't to them.
Or
Period.
to you.
Right.
Because now you're asking someone.
Right. To yeah. So and I always ask people, so if this could go any way that you want it to be, what would it look like? What would happen? And they said, we'll get free. You free today. You free right now. Go ahead and get that passport and get the hell out of here if you want to, because you're free today. And that's in what we have to get people to understand, is that you're not beholden to anything here. That's made up. Right? You don't have to do this. You don't have to do it like this. You can be poor anywhere in the world. You know what I mean? And do better. You know, they say that Americans have some of the best dressed poor people in the world. Have you heard that saying? and sometimes, you know, let me give you a quick anecdote. I remember the first time I went to Cuba. I went with a group, and I had to go to a conference or something first. So I had all of these bags, and you know, I had my fashion, I had my name brands, and, you know, and all of that kind of stuff. I was the only one in that group with like 3 suitcases, and we were like traveling all around, and I didn't understand. And then, you know, and I had expensive bags and shoes and things like that, worthless in Cuba. My dollars that I had, worthless in Cuba. I had to just be. I had to just live, and I just had to experience. And a lot of things were uncomfortable, like you have to take toilet paper with you everywhere that you go, and you might have to pay to go into a bathroom, or they don't have the kind of food. But what I realized there is that the people were happy.
Yeah.
You didn't see people fighting in the streets. You didn't see people shooting each other. If you saw a fight, it was with a man and a woman because they got into an argument, you know, about their relationship on the street. And I'm dead serious about this. You could have police with AK-47s or whatever walking around the street, but nobody's going to get shot. You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying that it's better for everyone there, because everybody has their issues in the place that they're in. But what I'm saying is, as a Black woman coming from America, and in being able to let go of that facade of Blackness and what it is to be valuable and things like that, and just living in the sunshine, you know, of all things, and you're eating well, and you get to walk, and you don't have to drive everywhere, and the air is not killing you. You know, it's when you don't realize that you can even live that way. I feel like it's sad. You know, it's really sad that we don't even know that this is the stuff that's everything that we're trying to hold on to here is the stuff that's killing us on the inside. It's like literally, and not figuratively, literally killing us. The way that we work, the way that we live, the way that we get paid, the way everything. It's literally killing us. How do we get past that part?
I believe both of you asked a question that is always on my heart, and I always ask my Black American friends, why are we still here, right? And my question is, okay, well, what does America have for you that you can't get anywhere else? And a lot of times I hear, we built this country. We built this country. So I want my 40 acres and a mule because we built this country. And I often ask them, like, well, if you're trying to take back the country that you built for somebody else, what about the original people who were here before that? What do they get? Like, what question are they going to ask? Because they're under the same type of oppression that we are. And if we're saying once the election's done, we're free. Okay, there's another problem. If we're quote unquote free, somebody else want their land back. Somebody else, like, y'all. I know you built it. Fight. Yeah, you feel me? There's a whole different fight. And so, like, again, it's the realization of what else is out there for us. right? And I would not know if you never brought me onto this, I never would have known that there was a whole settlement over there in Tulum right now. I never would have known. I can go to Tulum or call my boys that are literally there right now and be like, hey, did you know there's black people there? Like, right?
I've probably seen them on the street already.
Acting a fool. But again, like you said, if I don't know, if I don't see it, what can I do about it? And I literally can't do anything if I don't know about it. And everything that's killing us here in the States, as you said, is so much, there's a better life outside. And I guess we need to realize that here in order to even take any steps towards anything. Because if I ask anybody about Africa, they're like, oh, I'm not going there. They're not going to accept me. I don't even speak their language. Like, what do I do if I go there? I'm like, bro, you know that like this country is a whole English speaking country. Whole English speaking country. You can go there. You'll be okay.
They
You'll be
speak
okay.
English. Yeah. I think, look, when we think about, I'm going to keep going back to imagination, right? Like what do we do to get people to understand? One, we have to re-educate people. There has to be a new wave insurgence of like Black education.
Yeah.
People just don't have the skills to be critical, to actually know how to take information and process it correctly. What I find is that across class, Black people have an inability to properly assess their situation. And I think when you don't have the ability to critically analyze where you really are, and then comparatively to other places, you'll always be the victim of, the mythology, because all you're doing is going on the rhetoric and not on the actualities of like, what, I don't even know if that's a word, but the actuality of, of what is really happening. And I think that, so I started doing very practical things, laying out the cost of living. Here's the cost of living in Morocco. Here's the cost of living in Houston. Here's the cost of living in here, so that people can start, like, we have to get to the details now. I think we've had a lot of time of big rhetoric. Let's get to the details so that people can lay it out and see it, right? And then just, beyond cost of living, like, you see people shining, you see people losing 20, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, the first 3 or 4 months that they're in a place, because the stress that you hold on your body brings weight, brings all of these things. We need to start comparing our health outcomes. What are the health outcomes of Black Americans versus the health outcomes of folks in Cuba? Let's be real about that. We have better health outcomes in other countries than we do here. There was a time period, I remember I had a low birth weight baby, and it's because of the stress that African-American women are often under during childbirth, right? Our low birth rate was comparable to Ethiopian women at the height of starvation in the US.
And we're
These
dying
every day.
Yeah.
Dying because they're killing us too. They're not listening to us, right? So, in Morocco, you have a whole women's circle of support after you give birth. It's cultural, and I think, in Africa, when I'm in Ghana, I have help. Like, and this is the thing, like, people, you have more help. I could have another baby at 40 something years old and on the continent, because I could have someone to help me with my child, and it's cultural. It's beyond class. Right? Like, people, you have help. And I think the way that we live has to just be compared. We have to be able to show and draw these comparisons. All of these things have to happen at the same time. They have to be practical solutions. I'm not the hype chick. I'm gonna tell you, I don't do that. These are practical realities of what you can do. Here are real job opportunities that you can have. And figuring out, how to show people that you can still make American dollars, and ultimately that you should think about being global. This isn't about, we're not coming to America. You don't have to renounce your citizenship. It doesn't have to be that dramatic at this stage in the game. Just imagine yourself global. Imagine that these borders are the imaginations of crazy white men that they are, and that they don't really exist. You can actually walk over a nation and be in another, and it's like, there's no line. Like, this isn't real. And we are the ones that get to show the world that we can we can, as humans, we have the ability, I think, to lead humanity to this next phase, which is a whole different kind of way of living across the board. And it's a global mindset. Keep the things that you need in the US. You don't have to give up your house. Make other opportunities for you to have other experiences. And then you might not want that house. And I think for me, that's really, that's pretty much where I got, like, I have a lot of homes now in a lot of places, and not physical homes. I don't need that. But like, I have a lot of places where I can be, where I've created community and family. And I still go home and see my parents and spend time in the US. But I know that that's not my only option.
Yeah.
And when it gets tight, like it is now, I leave. I take a little pressure off of it,
Right.
make it, you don't have to move to the forest and,
Please
and
don't
forage
move
your
to the
food.
forest. Right.
What as far as I think something that popped in my head that I want to point out was like the challenge, another challenge that a lot of our people face that are of the lower income status is identifying that skill. Right? What skill is it that I have that I can take to another country and really live off of, or put my worth into society? Because again, a lot of challenges that my students have are like, if they're asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know, or they'll say the typical doctor, lawyer, engineer, something of that nature. And one of my mentors really trained me to start asking them, instead of what do you want to be, what problem in the world do you want to solve? And said that would help lead them more towards finding a skill, because now that skill can transition to that imagination and that vision of, oh, I can do this, but I can do this anywhere in the world, because this skill will let me make money anywhere. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that I guess I push not only to the students, but even my adult friends. I'm like, well, what skill do you have? Because a lot of them say, well, I'm still trying to find my passion. I'm still trying to figure out, what it is that I do. And I'm like, okay, well, what skill do you have? What do you enjoy doing the most? And I think when we start to identify those skills, now we can start pulling those resources together and building that culture that we want wherever in the world it is.
Exactly. And one thing that I ask my students as well, along those same lines, Lawrence, is how do you want to be? How do you want to live? Like if you could write it, like you said, with the imagination, Tanisha, how do you see yourself, your best self? You know what I mean? And it's hard for Black people to think in those terms, right? America has the ability to reward individualism rather than community. Mm-hmm. So we're not like that innately as Black people. We're communal, we're tribal people. But it's hard for us to see ourselves in light. We see ourselves usually in something that's murky, that's dark, that's kind of, where you can't really gauge it. And when you ask, I remember I used to work with formerly incarcerated, well, I still do, but work with formerly incarcerated populations. And I asked one of the gentlemen, I said, what's special about you? Mm. And he said, nothing. And he had to get up and he had to walk away. He cried. He was like, there's nothing. And I was like, no, that's not true. I don't know your whole story, but there's something, And then he was like, well, I can play music. I can play the drums. I'm like, but that is something. But he was taught to believe that it was worthless. So what he started doing was someone let him do a couple of gigs a week in a club, playing the drums and things like that. And he started to kind of, come into himself a little bit more because he saw that it was possible. But I think that we don't get especially our children, enough to say, I can do any of it. If it's been done, you can do it. Exactly. and it's all been done, right? Mm-hmm. If it's been done, you can do it. If I can go to Belize and live for however long, or to Cuba or Venezuela, wherever it is, you can go, because I don't have no money. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You can go if you want to. I mean, you know, because when you think about it, like you said, the price of a ticket to Tulum is you know, you could get, but you get a pair of Jordans. You know what I'm saying? And they cost the same for
Exactly.
round trip, right? Now Liberia is gonna get you a little bit more, but you know what I'm saying? But you know, it's a little bit more of an investment, but that's only because of where we are in terms of our geography. But what now when you guys are creating these communities, right? Because you're not creating an individual experience, how do you see your best beautiful Black community when it's done? How is it going to be when it's done? When you can look back and say, I did that, or we did that. What's happening? What's going on? I want to see it.
Well, I want my community to look something very similar to Tanisha's, where we can speak Spanish and all these. For me, it's been learning all of the challenges of capitalism and making sure we don't repeat it in Liberia. Something as simple as, like you said, individualism. We're taught here that you work hard, you'll make it to the top, and then you'll be rich and you'll be this, that, and the other. And it's like, when we're so focused on trying to receive that gratification, I guess, from our work, right? We put so much focus towards, oh, I gotta work, because if I don't have a good job, people are gonna look at me like I'm this and that. It takes away from our humanity. It takes away from who we are as people, and it redirects us away from meaningful work. So I would like to see a community that has meaningful work that people look forward to, and not just like, oh my God, the weekend's almost here. They're like, no, I can't wait to go work with those kids. I can't wait to go to the laboratory and go develop something that's going to make my nation better. And building a society in which our nation, Liberia, puts the potential of every worker at the forefront, right? Not personal gain, not we need to have the best this. No, how do we make the lives of each and every one of our citizens better by looking at healthcare, making sure that's provided for everybody, housing. We don't have to build big, gargantuous houses the way that we do here in the States. We're literally able to use the ground to build bricks that will build amazing architecture that will outlast anything we have here. Being able to say, hey, we have technology that we can put housing for everybody, like the fundamental things we need to live as human beings, making sure that everybody has access to them, and being able to put to the forefront your intellects, being able to see two Black women who are beyond smart, being able to say, hey, those are the posters that we're seeing, the new innovation or the new achievements by these people, and not just, hey, yo, LeBron just made another dunk, LeBron got another billion, Jay-Z got this. Like, if our kids
don't have shit, right?
Right. Looking at something that's over there and not being able to understand, well, hey, if that person has $1 billion, they have $1 billion and have oppressed a lot of people on the way to those $1 billion, right? So we need to figure out, like, how can we look at society to say, as a collective, what are we doing together, and not just individuals? And I believe when we're able to do that, we can move everybody forward.
So, I mean, I'm living what I want it to look like. You know, I have about 20 people here, another, 60 on the way. Everybody got babies here. These Black babies are like becoming friends and building community. I grew up in a Black corporate community. There was about 20 couples. They've been married since forever, right? Still married today. And we all got together and we did activities together. We had parties together. We went on trips together. We all got the same van and, drove all over America together. But what it did is it fortified marriages. It gave you somebody else, other people to have a good time with, so your partner wasn't the only one that you driving you crazy. we raised our kids together. And what I see happening is like, hey, I'm running to the store because somebody watched this baby. And then one person might have everybody's baby in their apartment, you know. Even just what's happening from a community perspective beyond this sub community that we've created, the Mexican community has really come out to say, we're so glad you guys are here. Let's do something together. You know, I did a podcast for a young Mexican guy. I was the first English speaking person that he ever had. And he's like I call him the little mayor of Tulum. And there were so many young Mexicans just excited to start merging. You know, what can we build different? How can we not become gentrifiers, right? How can this look different? How can we merge our resources together so that it's good for everybody? How do we create jobs? I think that for just if I imagine and do something like more flowery, I really just think that human beings will always have conflict. I'd like for us to have a very high emotional intelligence within these communities, so that we can begin to learn to communicate with each other with respect. You know, like I'm always like, you can't beg no white man to treat you right when you can't talk to each other right. Like we're not kind to each other. And there's so many reasons for it. We understand that the big bully is the one you can't, you know, that's always picking on the small people because that's people that he can actually beat, right? We got to get to the place to where we understand ourselves collectively, as you said, but also where we start to give each other. If you can't, I give the best of Black people, the best service, the best, you know, the most understanding, the most leadway, right? And just that's what we're kind of having right now. We're all in the same building. We're all just sharing this space. Sometimes we do stuff separately. Sometimes we do stuff collectively. We make sure that there's support. Somebody didn't have salt the other day. I got salt, you know, on the WhatsApp chat. And we're in a new age. We got WhatsApp, right? You got group chats. We don't have, I think that people get so caught up in making this something of the past. Like we're not getting on boats to Liberia. We're getting on flights to Liberia. But that takes out some of this, like, the impossibility of it, right? This isn't hard, y'all. We got a whole cell phone. Like you know where each other, like you can talk and like use all these tools. Do expatriation 2020. We don't need to do expatriation 1919, right? Like we can do this at our way. And that makes it, I think, more real to people.
Yeah.
But I want us to be able, I want my daughter to be able to see herself fully. I want race to be nothing that she ever thinks about because she's so busy thinking about fulfilling her sole purpose in this world. And I think that when you're outside of the American space and race isn't your core default, you will be able to see yourself more fully. And that is what I hope happens, you know, in this temporary freedom colony and Spy Palace in Morocco that's coming next. Maybe the Black Freedom Colony will move around, and I just see us being able to raise these babies together. I see a lot more Black men joining us, which have been. Every time they register, I'm happy because I think imagination is really hard for them collectively to pull together the idea that it could be different. So yeah, peace.
Let me ask a more difficult question, if I may, play devil's advocate. So we have seen in the past, especially within the United States, when Black folks migrate, you know, whether it's forced through a gentrification or whatever else it's going on, and we have seen, well, I've definitely seen, I'm from Los Angeles as well. And when I was growing up, it was the push from LA to the Inland Empire. And that's where the Black people were going. And if you're not familiar with LA, the city in the Inland Empire is like the valley, it's the desert for all intents and purposes. Yeah. It's in the desert, about an hour and a half east of Los Angeles. And what you saw was a lot of the poorer people being moved to the desert. And when they got there, it turned into the ghetto. And this is I think a problem that is an issue of class more so than, and when I say so, it's social and economic class more so than race. Because I think even if you moved a group of 4 white people out to anywhere, you would have the same, same phenomena. So how do we get and re-educate those populations so they don't take that struggle to Tulum, to Liberia? Because I would imagine that would make it difficult to unlearn a lot of these things. So have you guys thought about this, or what are your thoughts about it?
Well, I believe I know I'm gonna learn something from Tanisha. And I'm so happy that I'm on the call because, like, again, I'm grabbing these gems and I'm like, not there. But something that we've been looking at was, what is the understanding of the people as a whole, not only us who are migrating back, but those who are currently there. What is our understanding together as to what we're working towards? What is our goal? And if we don't have a collective goal that we all understand, very similar to like our 10-point plan through the 60s, then we have no vision. We don't know where we're going, and we're just freestyling life every day. So something that we're solidifying through our meeting with community groups and things of that nature in country is, what is the vision? What is our collective vision of what we're working towards, so that everybody understands that, right? We know that there's a million things we're trying to work on, but what's those 5 things, or what are our top 10 priority? And if everybody understands that, we put our daily decisions against it, right? Through our company, we say, before we make any decision, whether I'm around or it's any of our teammates, you have to be able to answer the question, how does this move Liberia forward, right? So building a collective mindset of, in anything that I do, how does this move my country forward? Because it's not just about me, it's about us. So being able to identify those core values of what we're working towards, making sure everybody understands it. And once everybody is on that same page, now we can educate, we can put those skills to work, we can do everything because we know we're working towards one goal, and that's to move Liberia forward.
For me, this is where you're gonna get the hippie Tanisha, but
Okay.
I've always recognized this as a spiritual war. I know that Black people we're not fighting institutions. We're fighting a spiritual space that we have to reclaim. We have to reclaim our spiritual rootedness. And so I always say I know how to package revolution, but the biggest revolution is a spiritual one. And so for maybe the past 7 years, I've been doing a lot of healing retreats. So I do a healing retreat in Bali, and I do a healing retreat in upstate New York. And within the Black Freedom Colony, we have 5 healers within our group, offering up one-on-one sessions, offering up cleansings, offering up from the physical standpoint, from the mental standpoint, from the spiritual standpoint, and really encouraging people to do this work, because you do take you wherever you go. And I've been doing trips with groups for a very long time, and I watch the progression of people that haven't done the emotional, spiritual, and mental work to rid themselves of the white supremacy that they've digested, to rid themselves of their own hierarchical understandings of life. And all they do is act, they finally are empowered in the empowered position, and they act out the same oppressions on the people and community that you're going to. And, and I watch it happen every time I go to Ghana, where Black people haven't done the emotional and spiritual work to really recover themselves and to deconstruct all of these ideas that we've been, grown up with. And so when they finally get a little taste that they're not at the bottom of the totem pole, they act a fool, and yeah, act a fool. And I'm to a point where, even in my clauses of my contract, I have to put in about behavior, like if a kid asks you for money and you don't want to give it, it's a baby. You just say, baby, I ain't got no money today, right? You curse a kid out, you're out. Like, I'm not giving your money back, just go. Like, this has happened.
That's
Because
very American as well.
very, but Black American people, because they're so oppressed, if they have not done the work to deconstruct this in their spirit, not just intellectually, but in your spirit, you will reenact. Because when you finally get a little taste of that power, you'll reenact all of these things because you don't really care about oppression. You really just don't want to be oppressed. And that's a very different way of understanding the world. You know, I deeply care about oppression. So I don't want us to be oppressed, but I'm not moving to any place and want them to be oppressed too. I want to understand how we do all this stuff collectively, right? And so that work for the Black Freedom Colony specifically is built into this. And I say, you know, I'm gonna get you here with, I'm fancy. So you're gonna come on the luxury, but we're gonna do this work. And I'm gonna get you there slowly, slowly, slowly. And what I can say is the people that have gone through these healing retreats in Bali, no one is ever the same. Balinesian culture is really beautiful in the sense that they have this constant spiritual cleansing as a part of their practice, right? It's what they do all the time. And just having that skill, being able to like immerse yourself in that type of healing, it allows you to realize I don't got to carry this every day. You know, a part of it is just carrying this weight of American racism every day, everywhere you go. So you can't even allow yourself to have new experiences because you're looking through the lens. Everybody is against you. Everybody sees you, does something because you're Black. Everybody, and that just isn't the reality every place you go. And what if you don't do the work? The spiritual work is the most important part. So our sessions are going on. People are signing up for the sessions. We do have, because some people don't want to make the investment in their spiritual development and in their emotional intelligence because it's work to get to that place. So we have like group circles that we'll be hosting so that if you don't, and what I always find is that once you start to do the work in the group and you get access it for free and you start to feel better and you're like, I need to sign up for some of these one-on-one sessions. And
is it
really
mandatory in your group?
It is not mandatory, but I'm very persuasive.
Oh, okay. So it is mandatory. So we just, okay. But I think you make some excellent points about how we take our Americanism, even in blackface, right, to other places, and we act out Americanness in it's almost kind of sad because, you know, Paulo Freire calls it when the oppressed becomes the oppressor, right? It's a very common thing that when you get a little bit, it's like you kind of go overboard, because what we don't realize, I think, as Black people, is that what we're trying to do is interpret and mimic power.
Right.
We don't know inherently or innately what it is to exercise that. So even when we do try to exercise power, we're trying to do it like them. We're trying to make it look, you know, we're assholes about it. Let's be honest, right? We get in there and we treat people bad. We talk ugly to people. We might hurt them or whatever it is. And that very much is a spiritual issue. It's also a mental health issue. And so I want to get to that when we're talking about going to Liberia and we're talking about Tulum and Morocco and things like that. How do we address the very, very deep psychological trauma that we experience on a daily basis, and we go somewhere else? And because I see these communities personally as healing communities, right? If you're going to take that leap and say, I'm going somewhere else, you're trying to have a different kind of experience in your life. So how do you guys, beyond the spiritual, because I'm guessing you're going to get a lot of Christians there, so but you probably won't be able to deal with the spiritual in the way that you might need to, but the mental health, how do we get to that? What's the remedy?
She gave the answer already, which was addressing all of our inside, our spiritual woes. But those mental health circles and things of that nature, I feel as though you should make that mandatory. Like that should be a part of the transition, because like I know that it is for Liberia Forward. Like part of it is understanding what is it to be American. Through this journey of building the foundation for Liberia Forward, I found out how American I am. I thought I was Liberian. I'm American as all. And like addressing all of these things, as you said, is very, very important before transitioning into that culture. One of our teammates, Dr. Elisha Fogel, came from Clemson. She's done work in Costa Rica, done work in East Africa, and what she does is research and understanding what do the locals think about outsiders, and trying to better understand from the outside what it is, what it looks like to live in that culture, and then taking all of that data, putting it together and building a picture of, hey, these are things that you need to address within yourself before coming into this culture so that you don't offend people in this culture. And while doing that, I believe we, in a sense, start to address our challenges personally, right? Because if I tell you, hey, you can't yell at children if they come up to you asking for $1, because in America, you're looking at that child as, oh, you're poor, you ain't got nothing, like, leave me alone. I'm over here doing my thing. It's like, no, you're a part of this society, and part of being a better person is letting somebody understand, or addressing, knowing how to communicate with somebody, right? Not saying, man, I ain't got it, get out of my face, or, hey, I'm sorry, I don't have it right now, but next time I do, I'll look out for you, or, doing something other than that. And so being able to understand our challenges as Americans will then start to unveil our mental health challenges that we have as well. Why do we react the way that we do to certain things? And most of us don't have that understanding, but when we start to develop that understanding, we start to develop an understanding of self as well. And I think from there, we can start building community together once we start to get away from the sense of individuality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I'm a historian, so I'm biased, but I think history leads to positive mental health. And I say it like that because when you understand the trajectory of what has happened to you, and then people give you the skills to better understand it, then you can start addressing specifically the pain and the hurt that's been caused by those things. So, here we have the other American history, and you got to do these from kids up. This has to be a multi-generational classes that you take, and you have to do this intellectual work. What I find is that the intellectual work leads to the spiritual work, because once you understand your condition and you start to understand how to treat it, then you're more open to all of the other healing tools that are available to you. But I think that there's some real practical things, like the idea that we still have our babies in these American school systems blows my mind, with all the data that we have, with all that we know. We are not making decisions based on data. We know it. We know what white women are doing to our children. 85% of American teachers are white women. We know what they're doing to our kids every day, but we still get up and take them to the same school, and then we fight the school, where you need to pull and create these opportunities. So like here at the Black Freedom Colony, the fact that we have our little home school. So some kids are still in their regular program, right? But you have a whole community of people where we're doing our history class. And so it's a re-education. So you can teach them how to take this new content and match it up against the content that they're learning, understand why the conflict exists. I think that when kids understand their condition, it allows them to make better choices as adults. And some of these mental health concerns that we have is about hopelessness, right? Like the idea that you feel hopeless is what pushes you into these spaces where you're completely imbalanced, combined with food, it's not there's no one thing. We have to eat better here. And so here, what we're talking about is from all spaces, like one of the dinner parties, again, you mix the fancy with the practical. One of the dinner parties is a Black woman living in Tulum that's a vegan chef. And our first dinner party is going to be, vegan sous peas. And it's small, right? But when someone says, oh, vegan dishes taste like this, then you say, oh, and here's a list of all the other vegan restaurants that are in Tulum in your community. Like I'm not I do think that you have to know what people can take, and you give them a little bit at a time,
Yes.
And you spoon feed it to them, and you get them to help. And I have a community of people that are ready to help, ready to do the work. And But I believe actually it starts intellectually first, and then you can get to that space spiritually, because they go hand in hand. Like once you understand intellectually something, it's hard to stay the same. You will crave more, you want more, and then I think you become more open to the spiritual work that is to be done. And we got to get people cleansing, got to get people in every single way. So most of my work is kind of packaged as fun and luxury and new experiences, but the core of that work always brings you back to healing, always brings you back to talking about some of this stuff that you've been holding on to. So yeah, and we do have a list of principles and strategies too. I really like that. I think that's foundational. What do we believe about the world? Some people don't know what they believe about the world,
Right.
and challenge each other on it. Do you really believe that about the world? Is that how you really want it to be?
Question for you.
Yeah.
My question for you was with having the experience of having people moving into these colonies and things of that nature, with people having different beliefs, especially us here in America, a great percentage of us are Christian. Have you had any experiences where you had somebody who was like heavily in their Christian belief coming to this colony and seeing people like embracing a different type of spiritual practice, and then like what have you had any challenges with people like saying like, oh, I don't do that because that's different, and then like slowly start
terrified.
Yeah.
When you don't say Jesus.
Yeah. Here's what I think. I think that, everybody's going to get there different times. I think when people get to this place to where they're ready to pack up their family and move to Mexico,
they're already on something different.
They're ready, right?
Right.
And I think we work at different stages. My sister's an educator. She's a principal. She's working at the ground level. She's on the ground. I'm not. That's not my work.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that I deal with the people who are they're attracted to me because they're ready. They see what I do in the world. It's not a secret, right? And they're interested in it. And to me, I want to be clear. Like, I don't believe that real Christianity is in conflict with liberation.
Right.
I think what we've been fed,
Western,
how the tool that's been used is in conflict with liberation. So to me, your spiritual awakening really has little to do with your religion. I don't get into people's religions, do you? But how do you reconcile yourself? How are you really walking through the world? Because when you're really reconciled with God, however you see God, you walk different, you feel different. If I can't see the physical manifestation of that in your life, then we still have work to do. And that isn't in conflict with your Jesus. It's just, what is the you work to get you to that space, right? And there's a framework for it in every single religion made. There's a framework, for peace. So you could use this from every different direction. And my healers are very diverse. Some healers are like definitely not Christian. Maybe they're more voodoo, maybe they're more this. Some of my healings are absolutely rooted in the Christian tradition. What we find is that getting people to their spiritual selves and like it doesn't have much to do with religion at all. It's so deeply, it's beyond that. But I think making sure that all of these communities have that space to deal with mental illness is the absolute necessity. And I feel like I've become an expert at it. I owned a hair salon for like 7 years before I started doing travel work with Black folks. And you'll understand that we're layered people, we're hurting people, we have so much, and you have to be gentle. And I work with myself. Like, there's often things that we've been having this one conversation with one of the African American men that's here around Black manhood. And I had to do so much work to heal from just my perceptions and, around Black manhood in America. And I know in order to do this work that I'm doing, we need Black men here. We need them to feel welcomed and to want to come. And that means that my welcoming has to be different, So I keep doing the work, and then I encourage other people to do the work. And I think, you can always show people, but then you can tell them. And the minute people start to feel better, they'll keep going. You eat better, you look better, you feel better.
Energy.
Okay. So before we wrap up, I just wanted, because again, this is the remedy, I wanted to connect the two of you, and you guys are at different points in your progression in this, but the idea I think is similar, maybe not the same, but definitely similar. So how can you or how can we build on this conversation today? What does Lawrence have that Tanisha has, and vice versa? And what can Arc Republic or Dr. Spencer or whoever it is, what do you need that we can build on today?
Well, I guess as the rookie to the game, the knowledge and experience would be the first thing that I would seek from either of you, because you've both done that work that I'm currently doing and bringing people to do. And so I believe that knowledge and experience is like the richest thing that a person as myself in the situation that I'm in could get, because a lot of the challenges that you've already faced are challenges that I'm getting ready to face, but I could simply ask a question or simply just sit down and listen. And I'm sure I will learn so much, as I've done already through this conversation and even through our previous conversation. So if anything that I could ask, the remedy for me would just be the opportunity to have your energy and exchange that energy so that I'm able to learn and grow, and then we're able to see what other opportunities can come from it. That would be the number one thing for me.
Ooh, for me, the interesting thing, I've always been like a lone wolf in the world, just doing my thing, and then people come along. And I think now we need numbers in a way that I'm more aware of than I think I have been in the past. And I realize exposure is one of these things. I thank you so much for having me on the show, because exposure, it really does change how much access people have to these ideas. Mm-hmm. And you can't do that on your own. You really need, and I'm kind of hard hitting. The press ain't always open. They don't want to have the real conversations. So we really depend on each other's podcasts and magazines, and to be able to have real, honest conversations with each other. So I'm very appreciative. And I think that exposure is number one. And especially like now that we have the Young Black and Global, I'm realizing, because I've also really never sought funding. And during this time, there were all these opportunities to get funding, and I realized that they come with a lot of conditions. They come with a lot of conditions, and conditions that I'm not willing to make those sacrifices for the conditions of those resources. So I understand now that I have to figure out a way to, this money, like this Black Lives Matter money, is the same money that I could have 10 other families here, with $1,500 a month. Like, these are.
I'm sorry, when you say Black Lives Matters money, what do you mean? Just to
clarify. The money that they raise is pretty astronomical. I mean, there's a lot of money that has been raised to support, Black Lives Matter, which is, there is. And,
we know. But that's a different conversation. But go ahead, sister.
So in my assessment is, I have to shift now. I think being more open to and aware that we can't do this in a small way. I need to figure out how to get more resources, but in institutions or with people that don't come with these conditions. And I think that if people are really honest, if they see the work, like, this is work, and also the Black community starting to recognize that this is labor, right? So part of one of my real issues that I've had as an entrepreneur / activist, I'm more activist than I am entrepreneur, I think, is that I had to reconcile my relationship with money, understanding that, look, the work that I do, I got to feed my kid. I got to be able to pay these bills. And so I think, our community starting to really respect this work differently and support it financially in a way that we're supporting other things that aren't really leading to our liberation, right? Real schools that are being built. That's a Mar, reference, but real schools that are being built, things like that. I think that exposure and resources are just real. We need resources and we need exposure. And so, yeah, I think that those are the two main things that I can see now. Because then this idea of class, right, can kind of be dissolved. Because I think initially it's going to be people that can afford it. And that's
Right.
always everything. So here we are. We have the people that can kind of access this, that can afford it. And then I think the next step for me as I look towards Morocco is I have this opportunity now to bring other people along that might not have the money to be able to make the big move, but we can help them along. So I think, yeah, figuring out how to get access to that and from our community, not from institutions that are going to then, you know.
I have
I'm
a
sorry,
few,
I'm writing this down as you guys are talking. Go ahead.
no, I was saying I have a few ideas for you. Some
Okay.
that we're looking at doing.
The millennials always got the money ideas.
Yeah, money is made differently nowadays.
Yeah, they're very cost effective. And even when we talk about just getting ourselves out there, like our team we're pretty good at social media. And so being able to, and something that I found on this journey is just being, like you said, being able to bring these resources together, not only show people, but be able to say, like, we're a unit, we're global, right?
Yes.
How fast can the regular person on the street identify a Black global community, right?
Right.
And when you're able to go somewhere and say, oh, there's a Black global community right there that is operating out of Tulum, out of Liberia, out of Belize, out of this, now you can start bringing in that funding because they're going to say, oh, well, they're legit. They're a global company, or they're a global corporation that works together. So
I have some things I want you to join. I'll hit you up after so that
All
there's
right.
communities. Yeah, and
I love it when we build, y'all.
communities of people. We're already doing it. We're already there. So yeah, there, and especially on the continent, I think that we have to really look at the continent as a whole,
yes.
right? Like you have these individual countries, but you know, we can move around the continent. We can create, there's so many, the continent is the place of opportunity for us. And I know that to be true. To me, Mexico is an interim step, but the continent is the ultimate goal because they want us. I'm already working with the Senegalese government. I'm already working with the Cape Verdean government. They want us there, and we have private institutions. The Black Freedom Colony has been invited to Tanzania with whole buildings, to Senegal, to Cape Verde. I mean, there are places that are ready and willing to take us and all the skill and ingenuity and creativity that come with us.
Okay.
You know.
Amazing. All right. So finally, tell us how we get in contact with you. How I'm getting to Liberia or Tulum? How am I getting there? Tell me what's happening. I'm trying to let me get my tickets. How do I get there?
Denise, you gotta go first.
So you can find me on Instagram at T Barnes Global Lifestyle. You can find me on Facebook at T Barnes. I think also at T Barnes Global Lifestyle. Everything is T Barnes Global Lifestyle. The Black Freedom Colony has its own website, blackfreedomcolony.com. And it will give you all the particulars, all of the things that we're doing. If you want to do a Freedom Colony someplace else, we got a whole structure set up. We can share it with you so that you can replicate this in the place that you're interested in bringing people. And so my website is www.tbarnesgloballifestyle or tbarnesglobaltravel.com for now. It'll be switching over soon, but we're doing the big thing. But yeah.
Right.
Phenomenal. Our organization, Liberia Forward, Liberia, Liberia Forward, can be found on all platforms at Liberia Forward. It's Liberia, not Libya. I always have to make this distinction.
That's good to know.
So yeah, Liberia Forward. All of our information is on the website. You can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're constantly putting out information. Right now, we're in the education phase for everybody that's not in Liberia, teaching people what is Liberia, where's it located, what kind of history does it have connected to America. And as Tanisha stated, when you teach history, it's kind of hard to ignore it. And so that's what we've really been doing, is making sure that we can identify and tie that history to African Americans so that they can see, hey, there's a reason I should care about them over there. And then when you find a reason to care, you'll start to see the opportunity and how together we can uplift each other and move Liberia forward.
Okay. And when are you going to Liberia, Lawrence? When
November
will you be there?
1st.
No. Oh, okay. I would love to have both of you guys back in a few months just to see the progression of your work. I think that would be dope just to know, just to kind of follow your story. I think it would be important to see for other people to see the beginning, middle, and end phases. And hopefully there won't be an end phase, right? It'd just be
Right.
a
Keep
continuous,
going.
a continuum, right? So I want to thank you guys so much for bringing your stories, bringing your companies, bringing your energy to the remedy. I think we have some good places to start in terms of educating and reacclimating Black folks outside of the United States, because we know that this election is going to be a beast, right? And so we have to be prepared for that as well. And I think after this election, or around this cycle, you're going to get a lot of interest in what's going on. So right, and so we have to be prepared for that as well. And I think after this election, or around this cycle, you're going to get a lot of interest in what's going on. So this has been The Remedy with Arc Republic, a media revolution, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
We got the cure, we got the answer to what's happening in society. We got the power to solutions and provide the healing that you need. We got the cure, we got the answer with discussions that will set you free. This is the Arc Republic, and you're listening to The Remedy. The Remedy. The Remedy.